right, looks like the cameras are on now, so let's go ahead and call the work session to order for tonight's meeting, October 27th. I think we only have one thing on the agenda, and that's an overview of the new 911 system, and I'll turn it over to you and Jennifer, and kind of let us know what's going on. And I understand quite a bit of work's been ensuing for the last year or longer, getting this all worked out, so where are we at now?
I'm actually going to have Jeff walk through PowerPoint this evening. A lot of these slides you've seen before, and the last time we had a conversation about 911 and radio systems, so I figured a new voice would mix it up a little bit. So Jeff will get us started.
Okay. All right. So reviewing where we are with the 911 system. First of all, we wanted to take just a second and distinguish the difference between the two separate systems that are kind of ongoing in the county right now, one being the 911 system and the other being the radio system. Obviously, one way to probably look at it is the 911 system is what the public uses to talk to us at dispatch and alarm and at the police agencies. And then, of course, the radio system is what we use to talk to the field units that are actually responding to the emergencies. So the call taker is going to, on a 911 system, is going to ask, where is your emergency? That's how the call is going to start off. We can respond to your location if we know where you are, even if we don't know your phone number or whatever else. If you can give us that information where you are, we can get somebody coming to start helping you. The current 911 system is funded by a 2% landline telephone tariff that was authorized for the purposes of emergency telephone services.
Can we ask questions as we're going along?
Yeah, let's make this just informal, and
Okay.
if that's all right. I know you've got your notes already laid out.
No,
but,
that's fine.
I think if we try to wait until the end, it'll just flow better if we.
What happens to the 2% land telephone tariff when people quit using landlines?
Well, if they
As
don't,
they are. It's,
yeah, if they don't have landlines, then we don't have anything to collect against. So,
and then what kind of problem does that create?
well, it could create a revenue problem. We do have a slide later on that'll show you kind of where our revenue is concerning that.
Related to that, I know Jerry Doherty talked about before making that 2% tariff apply to cellular lines as well. Is that something that has to be done at the state level, or can that be done at the county level?
The authority to be able to collect a tax on the cell phone or even charge a fee on like a prepaid is an authority that has to be provided by the state. So we can't do that currently.
Okay. Thank
We do have the authority today to charge a sales tax for 911 if we wanted to instead of the landline tariff, but we've had the landline tariff in place since the 80s. Or earlier than that, but most recently authorized in the 80s.
Okay, so then the radio system, again, is where dispatchers coordinate the response of the emergency folks that are out in the field, and it's funded by an increase to the county capital improvement sales tax passed by the voters in 2000, or approved by the voters in 2009. The main 911 system is housed and run by the Department of Dispatch and Alarm in Wentzville. The city of St. Charles owns and maintains their own separate 911 system, but the two systems are connected. We can serve as a failover to one another if our systems go down. PSAP's utilizing the county system. There's approximately one rack of equipment. So if you look,
Jeff,
Yeah.
what's a PSAP?
I'm sorry. So a PSAP, yes, is a public safety answering point. I think we might address that on the next slide, but a public safety answering point. So anyone that's capable of answering a 911 call, an agency that's capable of doing that.
Right now, there's two agencies.
There are a total of 8. So all the police departments that have the ability to answer their own 911 calls, they're actually primary PSAPs, primary public safety action points. They always answer the call first, and then the call, if it's a fire or EMS emergency, gets transferred to us by them. And then we also have a backup answering point for us and the sheriff at the EOC.
We get a good picture to show how that works.
Okay.
Yes. So they all have one rack of computer equipment for the most part, give or take, and then we have about 2 racks full of equipment out at Alarm and Dispatch. And then there are lease connections between each one of the PSAPs and the master site out at Dispatch and Alarm to keep everybody connected together. So there's our public safety answering point, is the location capable of receiving and processing 911 calls. The current PSAPs are St. Charles City, St. Peters, O'Fallon, Lake St. Louis, Wentzville, the sheriff, dispatch and alarm as a secondary, and then the county EOC. So we talk a little bit about what happens when you call 911 on a landline. So you dial 911, and it goes to a router at the phone company and says, well, we have a thing called a MSAG, Master Street Address Guide. So if you use a landline, it's physical, it doesn't move. We have a database that says this phone number is tied to this location. That information is passed on to the primary PSAP, one of the police departments that answers the phone. They determine the nature of the call. If it's a police emergency, they dispatch the police. If it's a fire or EMS emergency, they transfer the call to us. We process the call, we dispatch fire and EMS, and help arrives.
Okay, I've never called 911 in my life.
Okay.
If I call 911 from the city of St. Charles, the system knows that I'm here.
Right.
It calls the police department
In the city of St. Charles.
in the
correct.
city of St. Charles. I talked to a dispatcher there, and, you know, do they ask me all the same questions again when they route me down below because
Yeah.
I'm needing an ambulance versus a police?
Right, so I'm assuming they do like us, they're gonna ask you 911, where's your emergency? And they're gonna ask you what's the number you're calling from, and they're gonna say, okay, tell me what happened. They say it's a medical emergency, they can stay on the line, they transfer the call to us, they can get police on the way to help, first responder help. They can transfer the call to fire and EMS. We'll answer the call, we're gonna answer 911 the same way, what is your emergency? Because we don't know, it could be a transfer that came from, and we'll get into this a little bit, from across the river, from St. Louis County, because of a cell tower issue. So we always ask, where are you calling from? Again, we can always get help on the way if we know where. Then we'll verify your phone number, then again, the problem nature, and get the appropriate help on the way.
Okay.
Okay?
That's if you call from a landline.
That is from a landline, correct. So the next scenario is basically if you call from a cellular device. So when you call 911 from a cellular device, it affiliates, your phone affiliates with the closest cellular tower. Not, because obviously cellular, you move around. So there's two pieces of information that we get from a cellular call, or can get from a cellular call. It's called phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is we are supposed to get, sometimes we only get the cell tower number. We're supposed to get your phone number and the general location of the cell tower itself. That's phase 1. Phase 2 is the XY coordinates of you as the individual calling. I was just polling, I thought it was the case, but I was polling most of the police agencies that came in today. They are not capable or don't have the equipment to utilize phase 2 technology right now. So they have to work with the caller. Okay, where are you calling from? You know, if you're out on the highway, wherever, they have to get that information from you. If they transfer the call to us or we get the call, we actually at Dispatch and Alarm have the capabilities of plotting those XY coordinates in our CAD map and finding out exactly where you are.
How accurate is it, Jeff? Spot on, or city block, or?
No, it's probably not, somewhere in between. It's not, you know, I'm not gonna get you right where you're standing, but I'll probably get you within 100 feet or so.
That's why you have a lot of issues if I ever showed you one of the charts about how many calls each of the PSAPs get. You'll see, like in some of the areas where you've got a smaller jurisdiction, you may be getting a lot of telephone calls that you don't keep for very long, or that the call duration is very short because you're transferring it off to the proper agency, like you're actually within the city of Wentzville at the moment, but the tower that you're bouncing off of is located in the city of Lake St. Louis.
Again, the nice thing about all of the cell phone is, or the 911 system is that all of the callers, all of the answering parties can remain on the line and listen to the information that the caller is providing. So the same situation happens here. They determine where you are and what your nature of your emergency is as best they can. They'll dispatch the police, they'll notify us. And then if we don't know the exact location when it came to us, we do what can be, we call it a rebid for the alley, which is automatic location information or auto location information. We can do a rebid to find out exactly where you are, and then we'll dispatch the appropriate fire agencies as well, fire and EMS agencies.
Hey, Jeff,
Yes, sir.
10 years ago probably, I called for my dad. Told him it was 906 Hawthorne, and right away they said, is that the Hawthorne in St. Charles or
Correct.
Forestville? They won't have to do that anymore. They'll know.
We'll still verify that the information that we received is correct, but one of the
But
neat
if I was a stranger and didn't know where I was.
right, we're going to help you. Hopefully, if we know where you're standing, we'll say, "Well, do you see this?" or
Okay.
you know, that type of thing. But yeah, the neat thing, and again, I think we have a slide later on about this. The new system has a mapping component built into it, and when you dial 911, your location will show up on this map.
Regardless if you're doing a landline or a cell?
Correct. In either
Okay.
case, everybody will be capable of receiving that phase 2 data. So again, as long as it got plotted correctly, we should know exactly where you are. That is a problem that we have, is that, you know, obviously almost every town has a main street, every town has a second street, and sometimes that information can get mixed up in the, what we call the MSAG, again, that Master Street Address Guide. And we have to be very careful that we don't send responders to the wrong location.
So we're going to step over real quick and talk about the funding aspects, just to give you a refresher of where we stand on funding for the 911 system. So our existing system was purchased by the fund, and that purchased equipment that went to all of those PSAPs with the exception of the city of St. Charles. When the city had moved into their new police department, they had wanted fresher equipment at the time, so they had gone ahead and bought a new system on their own, not paid for out of the 911 fund at that time. But the 911 fund today pays for all ongoing costs for all of the PSAPs. So the phone bills and all of the T1 costs are paid for all of the PSAPs, including the city of St. Charles is paid for out of the 911 fund. But over time, and it's not just this has been a one-time issue, but the existing 911 systems can no longer be maintained both on the city side and on the county system. We've got hardware that's at end of life, as is software. So while there's new things and new components of phase 1 and phase 2 wireless that are coming out, you know, some capabilities related to being able to accept text, we can't do any of those things in our existing systems. And we had some conversations with AT&T, our current vendor, about potentially upgrading our system that we have today. And the condition of our equipment today, in order to be able to do an upgrade, it was really, oh, okay, well, we'll get you all new hardware and all new software. So that put us back into the boat of going to bid for a brand new system. The 911 fund can't afford to make purchases of both upfront 911 costs and new systems and pay for ongoing operating. We have multiple times now loaned monies from the county's capital improvement sales tax to the 911 fund in order to help pay for the upfront costs of new systems. That worked for some period of time. I think at this point, in where we're at in terms of priorities for emergency operations and communications, we need to be using the capital funds that we have, working on some other things like the master plan for a new site out behind the Sheriff's Department that we'll talk about more next meeting, and that we can't continue to do those loans from the capital fund. So that, I'll show you the slide real quick that's got the revenues, Councilman Brazel, that you were asking about. So there's generally a lot of conversation that landlines are decreasing and therefore our revenues are decreasing. If you look over time on average, for our county, that has not necessarily been the case. You can't see you don't see a negative trend line that shows that our landlines are just going down. Indeed, more and more of our calls, practically, I believe it's over 75% in all PSAPs, 75% of our calls are coming from cell phones, but that doesn't mean that our revenues that we're collecting off of the landlines has decreased at a proportionate rate. Just more people have cell phones and tend to be calling from that number. In terms of our ending fund balance of where we stand today, you'll see that spike we're able to build up a little bit of a fund balance before the last system in order to make that purchase. But with ongoing phone costs and the T1 charges, you just never have an opportunity again to be building up large fund balances to be able to purchase systems. So last year in 2013, when we were beginning to talk about what we were going to do about a new 911 system, we'd had conversations with all of the cities because it kind of coincided with our timeline on whether or not you wanted to have a tower or some type of radio connectivity in order to access the microwave system. So we went to all of the cities and said, if we can't continue to fund 911 and pay for it the way that we have, if you are interested in continuing to take 911 phone calls yourself, meaning not have somebody else answer that 911 call and just provide you with the information so that you could dispatch responders to that call, if you want to do that yourself, you're going to need participation to help pay for those costs. I think almost, with the exception of the city of St. Charles, because they weren't on quite the same timeline at that point, I think all of the other cities had gone to their boards in late 2013, and I think most of them had all taken an action by resolution saying, yes, we want to continue to be a PSAP ourselves, and yes, we're willing to pay for it.
If I could, just from the city's perspective, what's the advantage of being their own PSAP versus just have one blanket 911 system for the entire county and then dispatch from that.
Well, I'll answer the question tactfully so as to not incite a riot in the room. But when you look across, nationwide, you have some places in the country where a state has one 911 system that does all of the 911 call taking. And that has been a system that works great for them. Here in Missouri, that has not been the case. We have a lot of jurisdictions throughout the state who feel that it's very, very important for them to be able to take a 911 phone call themselves and that they can respond faster by having that address information and location information themselves, as opposed to leaving it in somebody else's hands to ensure the quality of service that their residents feel they need to have. So it certainly can feel free to ask any of the law enforcement agents in the room this afternoon, but in their standpoint, being able to do that enables them to be able to provide a quicker response and a better service to the residents. So after we had kind of made a decision collectively with all of the jurisdictions that they wanted to continue to do this themselves and were going to be able to help pay for the new system, we put together a bid package and a team that has gone out and worked to be able to get us to the point we are today where we're ready to contract with a new vendor for a new system. So we had a bid process that we went through in which we sought technical proposals from vendors based on qualifications and price that was submitted to us separately. Really driven primarily in our entire focus, and I'll show you the scoring rubric in a couple of slides, or Jeff will, that's focused on the technical aspects of that system and making sure that we get the best system that delivers on the needs of next generation capabilities and that enables us to stay better up as technology is changing and not getting tied to a system that can't change as new capabilities are developed. So our group reviewed proposals. All of our vendors came in and provided presentations, in some cases more demonstrations of how their systems worked. And our team scored the technical responses, and we compiled all of those scores, and then we opened price and separately scored price, which accounted for 10% of the overall score.
Okay, you're saying the team consisted both of county
I'm going to
and
flip
municipalities?
in 2 pages and give you the
Okay.
whole darn list. So our timeline then, just so that you can see the dates of when we've been working on this, we started actually in fall of last year to put together some of the specs for the new system, put together the teams, issued the RFP back in April, and had responses that were submitted to the county on July 1st. Jeff got thrown into this in July 7th when he started, and then we continued to evaluate all of the proposals, had the presentations, separately then scored price, and for the last 2 months we've been negotiating with our preferred vendor to be able to get to a contract stage. So the folks who are in the room this evening is a group of folks who have helped us in this process. 911, unlike radio, I think our jurisdictions haven't been able to have had as much involvement in that system, in how the 911 system works compared with the radio system. Years ago when we bought the last system, the county pretty much made a determination on how many lines do you need, how many positions do you need, selected the system and dropped it in their lap. And so therefore we all know much less about how our 911 system works than our radio systems did. So we put together a technical review team of all of our IS staffs to help us in this process. Again, just a 911 system, giant computer system with some complicated components, so we needed their assistance. I'd like to recognize the folks that are here this evening. Brian Basil with the City of O'Fallon, the director of their IT department, Matthew Seeds with the City of St. Charles, county staff of Simon, Dave, and Drew, and did I miss anybody else? Did you all wave? And Patty Stevens, who's our project manager in the county IS department, who's going to be largely helping deploy this project over the next couple of months. And then our law enforcement team and dispatch and alarm team that helped review our proposals, Sergeant George Grove with the City of St. Charles, wave everybody, be friendly, thanks. Captain Kevin Pyatt with the City of Wentzville, Deputy Chris Hunt with the Sheriff's Department, Captain Christy Giuseppe with the City of Lake St. Louis, and then we also had Major Townsend with the City of St. Peters, and Captain Neske with the City of O'Fallon, and Jeff here and Dan Rowden while he was working as interim. Anything else? I think I'll let Jeff pick back up the rest and show you a little bit of the criteria we use to score the bids.
So the teams looked at the thing. The scoring went as follows. There was 20% of the weighted score was given to qualification and experience, 25% to system architecture, 20% to system features, including next-gen 911 capabilities, 15% to maintenance, service, and support, 10% to system implementation, and 10% to price. And I don't know how well you can see that, but that's the 3 vendors that were reviewed and the total weighted scores at the end of the day.
And I think I had mentioned in the overview at the last meeting, we had actually had a 4th vendor who had submitted a proposal and withdrew before we were to the point of even reviewing proposals.
Okay, so obviously we wanted to look at getting the best system not only for today but into the future. So one of the things that we decided on was that we wanted a cloud-based system. So we weren't tied to any hardware that ages, or so those multiple racks of equipment that we have in our back room or that the PSAPs have in their rooms will for the most part go away. There will be very limited equipment in the back room. It's a browser-based system or browser-based interface. It gives the ability for the dispatchers to take calls and log in at different locations. So, for example, a dispatcher from Dispatch and Alarm could walk across the hall to the Sheriff's Department or drive down the street to St. Charles and sit down at one of their 911 positions, log in as themselves, and have all of the 911 features that they need to answer calls for Dispatch and Alarm. Likewise, the PDs could do the same thing.
And the call for their location travel with them.
Yes.
So if you're calling, you're meant to be calling the Wentzville PD because you live in the city of Wentzville. If you're logged in as a Wentzville dispatcher in the city of St. Charles location, that call will get routed to that particular dispatcher as well.
And just as a side note, again, we don't want to get the two things confused, but similarly, we'll be able to do the same thing with the radio system, kind of serving as a backup to each other. We wanted a redundant remote, something that was redundant system and have remote data centers. So that's what the solution that we are reviewing that received the best scores has. It's got a 99.99% uptime, including during upgrades. So we can, they can upgrade one data center while the other one is still up, switch over, and again, have no downtime to 911. Administration, we wanted separate user logins, again, so that that can follow you around. Not only can we see who handled any one particular 911 call, but you'll have the ability to go around and log in as a police dispatcher for the city of St. Peters or a dispatch and alarm dispatcher. And then something that provides significantly enhanced reporting over the current system so that we can really see how many 911 calls are coming in, what time of day, how fast they're being transferred, how fast they're being processed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And
I have
the
a
real-
question on the
Go ahead.
cloud portion.
Yeah.
We did a contract not too long ago with a Kansas City-based data center, okay? Are we gonna be using something similar to that or the same data center for backup to the cloud?
We would not be using our 2 data centers. There's, as part of the emergency call work solution, they have proposed 2, but they're responsible for procuring those data center sites. So those are selected by Emergency Call Works and not by us. So it won't be here in St. Charles and at our backup location in Kansas City.
Will the backup location be a long ways away?
They are.
Okay. I mean, the cloud, I mean, I use the cloud some personally and it's probably new technology, but I mean, this is really critical information. What's the chances of that cloud crashing? Okay, or what kind of, if we have a cataclysmic type event like the new Madrid fault, okay, and it knocks the hell out of the whole system. I mean, one advantage of having those racks is maybe you'll get your local guys to still use them. I mean, is there a chance that, are you worried about that at all?
The 2 data centers that they've kind of talked about are multiple states away from each other, so the advent of an earthquake or something taking both of them out is slim. There's also redundant connections from each of the data centers to the PSAPs. So there's 2 ways for the information to get to us, and the information is being stored at 2 different locations. So
Kind of like the power grid, you would hope that when one goes down, the other one can fill in. Okay.
And the thing I'll mention on the reporting side, today, if any of the municipalities want to be able to get any type of reporting out of the 911 system, they're largely having to call dispatch and alarm in order to get that information. The new system will provide them access to be able to run a lot of their own reports, which will significantly enhance their current abilities today.
So Next Gen 911 generally gives us the ability for a 911 system to accept text and video while providing the dispatcher all of the usual Annie and Ally information, so number and location, etc. Again, those are Next Gen, what's called Next Gen 911 features. Again, the multiple data streams, we can get text messages to 911, we can get video messages to 911, we can get voice messages to 911. That does prevent some challenges to anyone that's running one of the 911 answering points. There's more information for the dispatcher to handle. More information can be good, but you do have to manage that additional information and how you're going to do it. There's increased complexity of the information, and we have already, at least in our center, I'm assuming the others have as well, begun talking about how we will handle those. Obviously, we'll have to implement policies on how to handle text to 911 calls, video calls, not only how we process that call, but how that information is stored and protected after the call as well.
And because of that new complexity that the dispatchers have to handle, the user interface for them is more important than it was in the past, and we'll touch on that a little bit as well.
Sheriff had said when that tornado hit that you couldn't get cell phone calls through because of the volume, but you could get texts through. So this would give the ability for someone to text in a 911 call, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
I'm glad that we're looking at that. I've got 2 college students that apparently the voice doesn't work at all. And if you want to talk to them, you have to send a text.
I understand completely, sir. So obviously we wanted something that provided 24/7, 365 remote system monitoring, and obviously a cloud-based system can do that for us. It's fully voice over IP compliant and can integrate with our current voice over IP system. It can support multiple CAD systems. So I know a number of the police agencies use ITI, we use TriTech. I know St. Peter's uses yet a different one, I don't know the name of it off the top of my head, but they can support input of information into all of those. So once we do have that Annie and Ally information, automatically dumps into the CAD and lets you go to that next step where the dispatcher starts using that information. Again, we talked about the redundant connections to each of the PSAPs from the host data centers. It will also do an auto alley rebid, so that's the location information again, very important on cellular calls because people on cell phones tend to travel. They can be going down the road. Sometimes they don't realize how far down the road they're going. They'll call in an accident. Well, they're right here. Well, actually they're calling an accident that occurred half a mile away, but they've just traveled that far. Or if they have the emergency themselves, we'll be able to track them where they are, and the system will do that. Right now we have to manually rebid. The new system will automatically rebid for that alley information at set intervals. We'll also be able to get system statuses, so we'll know the number of active 911 calls on the system at any one time, the number of 911 calls that happen to be on hold, the number of 911 calls that we have ringing, and the number of call takers that there are available to answer those 911 calls. So why Emergency Call Work stands out? It's a self-contained system, not multiple add-on modules for different functions. As Drew put it to me today when we were talking about this, they built the system from the ground up. It is one component, one system, not a bunch of components added together to make a system. Drew, if I say something incorrectly, feel free to jump in and help me out. Again, we talked about this. There's very minimal premise-based hardware. There'll be basically 2 switches, redundant switches at each of the PSAPs. And then the hardware would be basically a PC and a headset that would be supplied by the users. And that's really all the information that would be at each one of the physical PSAP locations. Jennifer touched briefly about the fresh and functional user interface that Emergency Call Works offered over the other vendors. And it's very clean. I've recently traveled to Muskogee, Oklahoma, and watched this particular system in action at a 911 center, and it was very easy to see what was going on. Nothing really got lost in the screen. the functionality, the different things that were available to you. Again, very easy to see. Based on the vendor presentations, again, the other two vendors that we reviewed, the information was just very, I guess for lack of other terms, cluttered. It could get lost very easily in the GUI interface that the dispatchers will be using. Future scalability for not only the additional features that might come out concerning Next Gen 911, but also if we get extremely busy in the county and need to have more 911 answering points, or each PSAP needs more seats or telephone positions in their PSAP, the system is scalable to do that. Multi-role call taker positions, we talked about that, where not only can you go from one PSAP to the other, but we do have folks that might work for us that work part-time at a police department or something, so they can actually log in as us, or at Dispatch and Alarm as fire and EMS dispatchers, and they could go to one of the police departments and log in there with different credentials and get all the information they need to manage 911 calls for that related PSAP. Supports requested alley configurations. Again, that was just one of the things that we'd asked for, that automatic location information, and they supported all the things that we'd asked for. Data integration and analysis included. We talked about the reporting, the fact that it can integrate into other CAD systems, things like that seamlessly. Significant reporting capabilities included with their system at the base level. Mapping and call selection, we talked about this very briefly, so forgive my vague or my poor slide here, but if you look at the map down there, so right now when 911 calls come in, we just have to answer them in the order that we receive them. We have no way of knowing where that person's calling from until basically we pick up the line. With the new system and a map, a 911 call may come in, we can answer that 911 call. Let's just say it's for a motor vehicle accident. We get another 911 call right there. Again, we can physically see on a map where that 911 call is coming from. If all of a sudden we get a 911 call that rings on the other side of the county, the call taker may say, you know what, maybe it's important that I answer that call next because these other calls right here in the middle might be all related. Again, that's something that we don't have right now. If that person was fourth or fifth in line, they just have to wait until we get through all those other calls. So again, that's the one that we may want to.
Is that a problem that happens a lot now since everybody has a phone on their hip, that you get a lot of 911 calls for the same incident versus as compared to where we were 10 years ago?
Yeah, typically we get multiple 911 calls for motor vehicle accidents, things like that are high visibility. Every now and again, it's an odd occurrence, but every now and again we'll have a structure fire or something like that, a residential house, and get one call. Again, very odd. So typically we get multiple 911. So if we answer the 911 phone, say 4 or 5 times, that may actually only create one CAD incident.
Okay.
Because again, everybody's calling in for the same thing. Now, we still need to interrogate each one of those callers to make sure they don't have some additional information that would be pertinent to the responders. So.
That was everything that we had for you on the system that we've got before you on the ordinance this evening. So if you had any additional questions, feel free to shoot them at us.
I guess the question I have is how are we going to pay for all of it? You'd mentioned before that the 2% tariff isn't really generating enough money to fully fund it. So do we have agreements with the municipalities, or what?
We don't have written agreements yet. We'll probably start working on those hopefully next month. But we've got a sense now of once the contract's signed and you've got the price that's before you this evening on the attached to the ordinance. We've got a pretty good idea that we intend to divide up cost based upon the equipment that's going or the connection cost specific to your PSAP. So in the pricing and how we've structured some of the questions with Emergency Call Works, we can get back from them, here's the cost of, if St. Charles wasn't a part of this system, here's what you'd be saving if they weren't here. Here's what all of the connection costs in order to get the city of Wentzville up and running, pay for all of their positions. And in terms of ongoing support, we've got a 7-year contract that we're wishing to sign. And we're going to take those maintenance costs and those ongoing costs, so your connectivity, annual maintenance and support, annual monitoring. I feel like there's one other category of annual costs outside of the cloud connectivity and the PSAP connectivity. And we're going to divide those up so that you can identify what would be a per 911 call taking seat charge. So City of St. Charles has got 5 call taker positions?
We have
6 call taker positions. Dispatch and alarm has got 5, Sheriff's Department 5. So we'll take that per seat cost and multiply all of that out so that we can get to what would be an annual charge or an annual maintenance charge. We're pretty flexible with the jurisdictions in terms of how we try and structure that payment from the municipalities to the county. Since we have been talking about this for a long period of time, most of them went back to their boards last year or in this current budget that they're working on now, and appropriated funds to pay for the 911 system. Because a year ago, when we had been considering whether or not we could actually qualify this as an upgrade with AT&T, we had gotten a quote from them for what would be just upgrading our current premise-based solution. So we had an idea of what it might cost all of the jurisdictions in order to deploy the new 911 system or the upgraded 911 system. So most of them have budgeted that memorialize in that same amount already to pay for the new system, and we'll work on agreements probably in November and December to memorialize all of that.
Is there a significant difference between upgrading the old system and buying this new system? I mean, are we in the same ballpark, or are we
In terms of dollars?
in dollar cost? Yes.
I believe the quote that we had from AT&T for a premise-based solution was between $2 and $3 million. I believe you see that the price before you this evening, and that was for a 5-year deal, is 3.7 for 7 years. So they're relatively in the same ballpark, but in terms of capabilities of the system, you're in a totally different ballpark.
Okay.
This was one of the best presentations I've seen in 4 years on the council, so I thank you both for putting it together. You made a complicated issue very clear for some of us that don't have a lot of technical experience. But I see a couple guys out there with badges and lots of stars and bars, and I'd like to know, sir, from you guys, this emergency call works. Do you feel that's best for your communities?
It's of the ones that I reviewed, I think it's the best system. It certainly sends us, our system, the City of St. Charles system, is certainly old and used and abused, and this provides us with a new way, certainly to communicate with people through texting or streaming video or however. I think that it's certainly a leap technologically in the right direction.
And this particular vendor you think is the best of the
This is the vendor that I chose, yes.
Do you choose to say that?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I got some questions.
Yeah.
Couple questions. When does this actually go online? When is it actually going to be operational?
Our project timeline that's in the contract would take us through, I believe it's April. Yes, April
25th of
of
next year?
2015.
Okay, and then, so this was a $30 million bond, is that correct?
No, that's the radio system. So this is 911. Nothing to do with 30 million, nothing to do with the sales tax,
So this is.
nothing to do with
this-
towers.
This is not the the radio system's a whole different issue? Okay, so when is the radio system online yet?
It is up and functioning, yes. Is anyone on the system and using it? No. Our current timelines right now is we actually hope to have law enforcement users or actually fire users, depending on who gets there first, on the system in November.
Of this year? Okay, so with all the old towers that the old system was on, are we gonna take those down?
Well, we don't have a lot of
The
old
one on
towers.
Shrewsbury?
We have, I think, 2 towers that we actually own. We have some other commercial users on those towers, so we have some lease issues to negotiate, but we've largely planned to decommission our existing towers, the
So the
county.
one on Shrewsbury, is that one coming down, or what are we gonna do with that tower?
Right, like I said, we've got some other commercial users on that tower that we'll have to negotiate some lease provisions with, because their lease is a timeline that it takes them some time out into the future. So we'll have some issues to deal with around that, but yes, our goal would be to decommission and take down that tower.
Dave? Okay.
No, I have any questions this time. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Jennifer and I spoke about this last week, and I'm really glad that you guys were available to come meet with us. Reviewing just the contract didn't begin to explain what we're doing. So, Jennifer, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Everybody else, thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, it is, I feel like I know what we're voting for now, and that was the goal for what we were trying to accomplish. Anytime we spend $3.5 million, we probably ought to know what it does and why we're doing it. And I'm thrilled. It looks like we're significantly increasing the capabilities, and the annual cost is going to be in the same ballpark. So I don't have any other questions. It seems pretty self-evident that we went through all the right procedures. I love how we included the municipalities in the process, and I think we've got a solution that makes sense for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.